I bought her the bracelet because I thought she'd like it. Not in a grand, romantic way. It wasn't an anniversary. Just a Tuesday. She'd mentioned something about wanting to track her steps, and I saw one of those new models on sale, a fitness tracker, charcoal band, sleek enough to wear to work. I ordered it on impulse, wrapped it in the box it came in, and handed it to her after dinner. She smiled when she opened it, pressed her lips together, held my eyes longer than usual. "You didn't have to," she said. "I know," I replied. We were doing okay, or at least pretending well. These past few months had a quiet, strange shape. Like living inside a house where something had died in the walls. No smell, just this lingering discomfort neither of us named. I still made the coffee. She still kissed my cheek before work. But sometimes her eyes were somewhere else entirely, as if she were living a second life behind the glass of this one. The night I gave it to her, she wore it to bed. The sync was automatic. It paired with the companion app on my phone without me realizing, probably because I'd set the account up months ago when I had one myself. I noticed the next morning, scrolling through notifications, her steps, her pulse, her sleep cycles, all neatly graphed. At first, I didn't think anything of it. She hadn't used it yet, still showed trial mode. But that's the thing. Trial mode devices don't log real data until activation. Except hers did. I tapped into the app again and saw a full week's worth of data. A full week. 7 days of activity, all before I gave it to her. April 4th, 11,209 steps. April 5th, 9,832. April 6th, 13,021. Heart rate spikes around 1 a.m. 3 nights in a row. But that wasn't possible. I wrapped it myself. The seal wasn't broken. She thanked me like it was brand new. She even posted a picture, captioned it, "Spoiled by the best red heart." Then I remembered April 4th. That was the day she stayed home from work. She said she had a fever. She texted me at noon saying she couldn't even make it down the stairs. When I offered to come home early, she told me not to worry. She needed sleep. Flu or something like it. "I haven't moved all day," she'd said. Except now I'm staring at a graph that says she walked 4.7 miles. Pulse hitting 130. Stairs climbed. 9 flights. That same evening, around midnight, the bracelet recorded a burst of motion. Rapid steps. Elevated heart rate. The kind of spike you see during a run, or something more intimate. I didn't say anything right away. I just stared at the data. The app showed everything in tidy, unforgiving lines. Activity logs timestamped down to the minute. Even skin temperature fluctuations. I tapped through them all, numb. The thing is, I wanted to believe it was a glitch. A refurbished model sent by mistake. Maybe I'd left it out, and she found it early, wore it before I gave it to her. That would explain the data. But that would also mean she lied when she opened the box. Faked that look of surprise. Faked her gratitude. And I didn't want to believe that either. I waited a few days. Checked the app obsessively, pretending I was just curious. Watching her move through the house in soft socks and hoodies, watching the bracelet glint on her wrist like an accomplice. The data kept coming. Midday walks. Spikes during odd hours. A low resting heart rate in the morning, then a sudden rise after 10 p.m., the kind that doesn't happen during Netflix or sleep. I started cataloging the entries like a crime scene, cross-referencing against her texts, her voice, her whereabouts. Then came last night. She said she wasn't feeling well again, curled up on the couch under that old plaid blanket she keeps in the hall closet. Pale, eyes glassy. Feverish, she claimed. Said she hadn't slept the night before. I kissed her forehead. She flinched. "Don't," she said. "I think I'm contagious." I made her tea. Later, I helped her into bed. Turned out the light. Watched her roll to the edge, back turned to me. I lay awake for a while, listening to her breathing. By 1:23 a.m., her bracelet said she was walking. Not just pacing the bedroom. Not sleepwalking. not a bathroom trip. She logged 2,000 steps in the span of 30 minutes. Her pulse hit 143. She never left the bed. Or at least, that's what I thought. At 2:04 a.m., the front door creaked. Quiet. Deliberate. By the time I sat up, she was already gone. I didn't follow her. Not yet. I just lay back down and stared at the bracelet's data sinking in real time. She was out there, walking fast, moving with purpose, like someone who thought they were unseen. The next morning, she made breakfast. Eggs, toast, her usual performance of domestic calm. Hair wet from a shower, fresh clothes, not a trace of fatigue in her body. Like she hadn't walked 2 miles in the dead of night. Feeling better? I asked. She smiled, soft, slightly tired. Still a little off. But yeah, think I sweated most of it out. I nodded. Did you sleep okay? She hesitated, just a breath, but I caught it. Yeah, she said. I think so. The bracelet was still on her wrist. She tapped it absently while the eggs sizzled behind her. This thing's pretty cool, she said. It buzzed me awake at the exact right time. Like, before I got too deep into REM. I stared at her across the counter. Did it track your steps too? Yeah, I think so. I haven't looked. She glanced at the app on her phone and shrugged. Barely moved yesterday, obviously. She was lying. And not just with words. Her entire face shifted, just slightly, every time she lied. The smile would hold a beat too long. The eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. A softness in her voice, practiced concern. I'd spent years mistaking that for kindness. Now it made me sick. I let it sit. Didn't challenge it. I kissed her cheek and left for work like it was any other day. But I checked the app from my car in the driveway. 2:04 a.m. to 2:38 a.m., she walked 2,117 steps. GPS showed movement out of the house, around the block, then a sudden dead zone. No signal for 20 minutes before the steps resumed in the opposite direction. The app tagged her as active. Pulse hovered near 140 for most of it. She was with someone. I didn't need footage. I didn't need scent or lipstick or the cliché. I had the bracelet. I had her heartbeat. That afternoon, I called the store I bought it from. Spoke to a guy named Chris who confirmed the bracelet was brand new. Sealed. No prior owner. No refurb. No chance of mix-up. I asked, offhand, what would cause it to show steps before activation? It wouldn't, he said. Unless she wore it before it was linked. You gave it to her after it tracked those days. Yeah. A pause on the line. Then someone's lying. I ended the call. That evening, she canceled dinner plans with her sister. Headache, she said. Going to rest. She retreated upstairs. Lights out by 10. I heard the door click softly. Watched from the window as she walked down the street, her silhouette folding into the night. Same hoodie. Same shoes. This time, I followed. I kept a distance. Enough to stay hidden, but close enough to hear the rhythm of her steps. Her pace changed near the intersection. Not slow or eager. I slipped behind a parked car and watched as she turned the corner. A man stepped out from behind a fence. Not a teenager. Not a college boy. Older. Confident. Button-down shirt. Sleeves rolled up. His arms open like this wasn't the first time. She walked straight into them. His hand found her waist. She laughed. Low. Intimate. I couldn't hear the words. Didn't need to. Her voice had a softness I hadn't heard in months. The street light caught her face just enough. Not guilt. Not hesitation. Relief. I backed away before they saw me. Moved through backyards like a ghost. By the time she returned, just after 3 a.m., I was in bed, turned toward the wall. I could smell unfamiliar cologne in her hair. Her body was warmer than usual. Heart still racing. She slipped beneath the sheets without touching me. The bracelet buzzed faintly. A soft pulse against my suspicion. The next few days, I studied her like a case file. She began faking symptoms more often. Said she was under the weather again on Thursday. On Sunday, she claimed she was at her sister's overnight. Each time, the bracelet betrayed her. Sleep tracking showed shallow rest, no deep sleep phases, no consistent position. Too many movement bursts. Her pulse too erratic for someone asleep. It didn't show her sister's neighborhood. It didn't show stillness. It showed motion. And one night, it showed her phone connecting to a new Wi-Fi network. The app picked it up, logged the metadata. A name, Orion_5G. It wasn't one I recognized. I copied it down. The next morning, over coffee, I asked if she still talked to that guy from the firm, some consultant she'd worked with last year, named Joel. She frowned, distracted. Nah, that was a temporary contract. I think he moved. She didn't look up from her phone, which was strange, because for the first time, she wasn't wearing the bracelet. It sat charging on her nightstand. I checked the app. No new data. That's when I realized something else. She'd started double syncing it with her own phone. Private data, private access. She was hiding her lies better. But she didn't know I still had access to the backup logs. And she didn't know I'd already found the location of the Orion_5G router. It pinged at a small apartment complex 20 minutes across town. Unit 206. I memorized the building. Memorized the route. Waited. Plotted. She was no longer just lying. She was building something. Somewhere else. A second life, padded with comfort and secrets. She thought she was clever. Careful. But her body told the truth. Her pulse told the truth. And when I showed up to Unit 206, I found everything I needed to burn it all down. I waited until Monday. She thought I was working late, just like I thought she'd been homesick last week. We were both pretending, but only one of us knew how far the lie stretched. Unit 206 sat in a quiet corner of the Willow Ridge apartment complex. Mid-range, modern enough to feel anonymous. A digital keypad lock on the door. No doorbell. No nameplate. Just a black 206 bolted above a muted green door. I didn't knock. I just waited. I parked across the street and watched the second-story window. Lights flickered on around 6:40 p.m. Kitchen. Living room. Movement through sheer curtains. Shadows of two people, blurred but close. I counted the minutes. Checked the backup data again. Pulse, 114. Steps, 328 since entering the unit. Skin temperature up. She was there. With him. It wasn't that I needed to see her face. I didn't want a confrontation. What I needed was confirmation. Something irrefutable. Not hearsay. Not speculation. Proof. I opened the app again and toggled the hidden diagnostics menu. A feature most people didn't know existed unless they worked in firmware dev, real-time location, movement detection, pulse acceleration curves. I'd worked in software once, long before any of this. Long enough to know how to access the logs that even a factory reset couldn't touch. It confirmed what I feared. Not only had the bracelet tracked her every movement, it had picked up proximity data, short-range Bluetooth tags, signal patterns. There was another device nearby. Another bracelet. The same model. Same manufacturer. Paired to a different phone, but echoing the same rhythm. His. I watched the screen. Her pulse rising. His matching hers. Two people in sync. I stayed in the car until the lights went out. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her body returned to mine at 2:17 a.m. cool this time. Distant. I pretended not to hear the soft creak of the floorboard she always avoided. Pretended not to smell a different shampoo in her hair. She curled toward me, loosely, like a stranger might. And I let her. But something changed in me that night. It wasn't grief. Or rage. I'd expected those. It was clarity. She didn't know I'd seen them. She didn't know I was tracing every movement, every heartbeat. She didn't know I was done playing fair. The next morning, I synced both devices manually. The firmware had a quirk. If two devices of the same model were within close enough range and one user had enabled motion pairing, The metadata from both could be merged for diagnostics. It was designed for comparative workouts, couples, training buddies. I used it to stitch a timeline. 2:09 a.m. Her bracelet activates. Steps 12. 2:12 a.m. Front door opens. Exit confirmed. 2:38 a.m. Inner unit 206. Proximity lock triggered. 2:47 a.m. Secondary device pulse. 97 BPM. 2:49 a.m. Her device spikes to 134. 2:51 to 3:19 a.m. Movement locked. Rapid. Repetitive. 3:20 a.m. Stillness. Baseline recovery begins. 3:44 a.m. Exit locked. 4:08 a.m. Home. It wasn't just a one-time mistake. This was routine. And yet every morning she made me coffee. Every night she slid her legs under the same sheets. Sat next to me on the couch, watched half of a movie, let her hand graze mine like it meant something. I started logging her lies. I kept a journal. Dates. Symptoms claimed. Excuses given. Pulse data. Step data. Temperature anomalies. I started building a timeline that read more like a trial exhibit. And I stopped talking. Stopped asking how she felt. Stopped offering to pick up takeout. Stopped being her husband in any way she could measure. She noticed. "You're quiet lately," she said one evening, folding laundry. "Just tired. You okay?" I looked at her. Really looked. Pale blue shirt. Hair pulled up. No makeup. Casual, vulnerable. The woman I married. But I couldn't find her eyes. The way she looked at me was always a second too slow. Like a delayed feed. Like she was scanning my expression for cues on how to behave. "You seem off," she said. "Do I?" She blinked. "Yeah, I don't know. I've been worried about you." That made me laugh. I didn't mean to. It just came out, sharp and small. She tilted her head. "What?" "Nothing," I said. "Just ironic." She didn't press. She folded the last of the towels and walked out of the room, her bracelet catching the hallway light as she turned. I noted the timestamp, 7:12 p.m. Pulse, 78. Steps to kitchen, 26. Lie, concern. By the end of the week, I had enough data to map out the rhythm of their affair. Mondays, Thursdays, occasionally Saturday nights, when she claimed to be driving to Target, but it was crazy packed. Always the same patterns, low activity before sunset, spike between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m., return to baseline by morning. But I also noticed something new, a change in her pulse variability after midnight. Her body was reacting more strongly, or differently. And then one night, around 2:30 a.m., the two devices separated. She left before he did, which was unusual. Her pulse dropped fast, like something had ended midstream, or like she'd been crying. I replayed the last sync. The proximity sensors suggested more distance between them than usual. The steps were erratic. Her walk, uneven. Whatever happened in Unit 206 that night, it wasn't routine. I watched her enter the house 30 minutes later. She paused in the hallway for nearly a full minute, then went to bed. Didn't shower. Didn't change. She lay beside me in the same clothes she wore out. Her bracelet beeped once as it docked. I waited for her to speak. She didn't. I stared at the ceiling and wondered if maybe, just maybe, he'd hurt her. Or worse. But I didn't ask. Because part of me knew. The other bracelet hadn't pinged since that night. Not once. 3 days passed without a single signal from the second bracelet. At first, I told myself he'd just turned it off. A dead battery. Maybe he'd forgotten to charge it. Logical explanations, the kind that usually comfort me. But the logs stayed quiet. The paired metadata vanished. All proximity events stopped. And her numbers changed too. Her sleep grew shallow. Her heart rate, normally elevated after midnight, flattened out. Activity dropped to almost nothing. She barely left the house. Not for errands. Not for walks. Just the occasional 10-minute loop around the block, like she needed to be seen moving. But not far. Not away. On the third night, she came into the living room around 9:30 p.m. and sat next to me on the couch. Not too close. Not too far. She pulled her legs up under her, held a throw pillow in her lap. "Do you ever feel like your life's off course?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. She continued, "Like you took a wrong turn somewhere and didn't realize it until everything feels sideways, but it's too late to fix it?" I stared at the TV. Some old movie played, something about astronauts or isolation. Ironic. "I think most people feel that way," I said finally. She nodded slowly. "Do you think people can find their way back?" I turned to her. She was crying. Silent tears. No heaving breath. No sobbing. Just clean, soft streaks down her cheeks. She looked at me like I was something far away she couldn't touch. "I'm sorry," she said. The words came out like they hurt. Not because she meant them. Because they cost her something to say. I wanted to ask, why now? Why this week? Why only after silence from him? Instead, I said, "For what?" Her lip trembled. "For being distant. For not knowing how to show up the way you always do." I watched her carefully. The bracelet was still on her wrist. I could see the faint red glow of the sensors flickering beneath her skin. "I've just been in a fog," she whispered, trying to outrun something, but I didn't know what. She reached for my hand, and I let her. She held it between both of hers. Cold fingers. Dry palms. She pressed her forehead to my knuckles like she was praying to a version of me that had already left. We stayed that way for a long time, but I didn't say I forgave her. Because I hadn't. I was just trying to understand why the other signal disappeared, and why it mattered so much to her. That night, I checked the firmware logs again, dug deeper into the cache device history. You can scrub location metadata, but signal traces, those are harder to erase. The last proximity ping from his bracelet was at 2:58 a.m., outside Unit 206. Not inside. Outside. Then nothing. No exit log. No handoff. No recharge cycle. Not even a low battery warning. Which means the bracelet didn't die. It was removed. Hard reset. Possibly destroyed. I cross-checked the building's Wi-Fi logs. Her device stayed connected for 11 more minutes after his dropped. Then it too disconnected. She'd stayed behind. Alone. I opened my journal and wrote a new entry. April 17th, 2:58 a.m. Disconnection. Severance. Event unknown. She didn't visit Unit 206 again after that. But she started going somewhere else. The new GPS trace led to a park about a mile away. Secluded. Lots of trees. A public walking trail that curved behind a pond. Twice that week, she spent over an hour there in the dark. No companion device nearby. No second signal. Just her. Walking. Sitting. Pulse spiking, then crashing. No linear activity. Just bursts. Panic, maybe. Or pacing. Grief. Or guilt. The last trace showed her sitting still for 38 minutes at the water's edge. Then walking home, steps uneven, pulse irregular. I looked at the map, then at the pattern. Then I went there. The pond was shallow and brown, with algae streaking the edges like bruises. A single wooden bench sat facing the water. Worn down, initials carved into the armrest. It was silent out there. Not peaceful. Just empty. I walked the trail she walked. Sat on the bench. Listened to the air shift around the reeds. I imagined her there, bracelet glowing faintly, watching her reflection tremble in the water. Trying to hold something together. Trying not to confess. I wondered if he'd ended it. Or if she had. Or if something had happened, something irreversible. Because something in her had changed. She didn't lie as often. Didn't play sick. Didn't sneak out. But she didn't tell the truth either. She just existed. Quietly. Wearing the bracelet every day like nothing had ever happened. That weekend, I saw her open the junk drawer in the kitchen. pull out a pair of scissors. I watched from the hallway as she sat down at the dining table and took the bracelet off. She ran her fingers over it, slowly. Then, with a calmness that unsettled me, she cut the band, snapped it in half. Clean, surgical. Placed the pieces in the drawer. Closed it. She didn't look up, didn't cry, just stood and walked away. The next morning, the app wouldn't sync. The signal was gone. No steps, no pulse, no trace, as if the last 3 months had been erased. But she still wore something new on her wrist. A thin bracelet. Silver. No sensors. No data. Just metal. Just silence. She never asked why I stopped syncing the bracelet. Maybe she thought I hadn't noticed. Maybe she hoped I'd welcome the silence. That I'd interpret the severed band as closure instead of a warning. But silence doesn't erase data. It just forces you to listen harder. I kept checking the app for weeks, long after she stopped wearing it. I wasn't waiting for a relapse. I was watching for a mistake, a reactivation, a slip. But nothing came. Just static. A black hole where a heartbeat used to be. Until one morning, I found the signal again. It pinged briefly, weakly. Not from her phone. From an old laptop I'd stashed in the closet months ago, the one she used for grad school. I hadn't powered it on in ages, but I needed a charging cable, and while digging, I opened the lid out of habit. The screen lit up. The app auto-loaded. And there it was. Bracelet ID 28146. Partial sync. Location mismatch. Last known activity. April 17th, 2:58 a.m. Nearby device. Unit _206 Wi-Fi. Final proximity contact. Secondary device, unknown status. Disconnection, manual. But this time, something new appeared. A crash log. An error that only shows up when a firmware shutdown is forced, specifically when the device is submerged while active. My chest tightened. Water damage logs. Fragmented memory states. GPS failure due to high mineral content. The bracelet hadn't just been removed. It had been dropped in water. Or thrown. That pond. That night. And suddenly, the silence made sense. He didn't ghost her. He didn't walk away. He didn't get tired. He vanished. I started digging. Nothing online. No recent posts from him. No updated contact info. But there had never been much. He kept a low digital footprint. No social media. The kind of guy who doesn't leave breadcrumbs unless he wants to be followed. But I remembered his last name from a holiday card she made me sign last winter. He worked at a design firm downtown. I called pretending to be a recruiter. Brandon Foster? I said, looking to confirm current employment. The woman paused. Brandon no longer works with us. Do you know where he moved to? A longer pause. Then, carefully, no. He didn't say. When did he leave? April 17th. The exact day the bracelet went dark. I thanked her and hung up. I didn't tell her what I found. I didn't confront. I just watched. She moved differently now. Not guilty. Not frantic. Afraid. The kind of fear that doesn't show up in screams, but in the way someone flinches at their own reflection. She stopped walking to the park. She started checking the locks. Once, I caught her staring out the window at nothing for over 10 minutes. That night, I opened the drawer and took out the broken bracelet. The band was cut, yes. But the sensor core? Still intact. I charged it. The LED blinked once. Then the data poured in. Cache logs. Buried deep. April 17th. 2:41 a.m. Rapid pulse. 148 BPM. Acceleration spike. Sudden fall in elevation. GPS moves from street to trail. Then to water. Then static. I stared at the graph. There were no footfalls logged after 2:58 a.m. Not for him. Only hers. Short steps. Fast. Leaving. Her pulse didn't slow for almost 40 minutes. Not until she was home. I didn't need to imagine what happened anymore. I saw it. I felt it. Whatever ended that night didn't end quietly. The next morning, I asked her if she'd go with me to the pond. She blinked at me. Why? I just want to walk. Like we used to. A long pause. Then a slow nod. Okay. We walked in silence. She wore the silver bracelet. It clicked softly against her wrist when she moved. I kept glancing down the trail, toward the bench. When we reached it, I stopped. She hesitated, just behind me. I turned and asked, "Do you ever come here anymore?" She shook her head. Not really. But you used to. A shallow breath. For a while, yeah. I sat down on the bench and looked at the water. Murky. Still. Something happened here, I said. She didn't respond. I waited. And when she spoke, it wasn't a confession. It was a whisper. You don't want to know. But I did. I already did. I saw the data, I said. Her body stiffened. I kept my eyes on the water. I saw the pulse, the movement, the silence after. She sat beside me, slow and deliberate. I tried to stop it, she said. Her voice was flat, empty. He wouldn't let go. I nodded, not because I believed her, but because it didn't matter anymore. Not to the data, not to the pond, not to the bracelet still flickering in my pocket. We sat in silence until the sun went down. When we stood, she turned to me. Her eyes were red, but dry. What do we do now? I looked at her, really looked, and said, that depends. On what? On whether he ever comes back. And we walked home, side by side. Two shadows stretched thin behind us. She didn't mention the pond again. Not the walk. Not what I said. She went back to normal or something that passed for it. The house was quiet in a different way now. Less tense, but emptier too. She cooked more often, asked me questions about my day, kissed my shoulder when she passed behind me. I played along, but I kept the bracelet, and I kept the logs, because there are some things you can't unknow, no matter how ordinary everything pretends to be. I started noticing smaller tells, new things. She double-locked the front door now, took shorter showers, flinched at sirens. Her phone, once glued to her hand, stayed face down more often. A kind of forced discipline, like someone trying to earn back something they'd already lost. At night, I could hear her breathing change when she thought I was asleep. Her pulse used to rise from guilt. Now it rose from fear. And every few days, I opened the app. Still synced. Still active. Still listening. 2 weeks after the pond, I got a letter. No return address. Just my name, written in neat, square letters I didn't recognize. Inside, a photo. Grainy. Nighttime. Taken from a distance. It was us on the bench. Her head down. My profile barely visible. Her hand on my knee. On the back, one sentence, scrawled in pen. Thought she was yours again? No signature. Just that. The photo was recent. The angle matched the east trail. Someone had been behind us. Watching. Not just someone. Him. Brandon. I sat with it for a long time. Not fear. Not surprise. Just confirmation. He wasn't gone. The silence hadn't been final. It was strategic. He was waiting. And she hadn't told me. She knew. Of course she knew. That night, I waited until she fell asleep. Then I pulled the bracelet from the drawer again, clipped a new band on it, and left it charging beside my phone. At 3:07 a.m., it buzzed. New signal detected. Bracelet ID 28147. Proximity, 42 meters. Status, active. Mobile. He was nearby. I stepped outside, barefoot on the porch. The night was damp and still. Somewhere down the street, a motion light flicked on. A dark car idled at the curb. I stared at it. It didn't move. The pulse from his bracelet stayed steady, 76 BPM. Resting. Watching. Waiting. I didn't wave. Didn't walk toward it. I just stood there, letting the signal settle between us. Then I raised my phone, took a picture of the screen, and sent it to her. Upstairs, a soft vibration broke the quiet. She was still awake. A minute passed, then another. The car engine turned over. Red taillights flared. It drove away, and the signal vanished. The next morning, she didn't say anything, but the silver bracelet was gone. In its place, the old one. Repaired, worn, visible. She caught me staring at it as we passed in the hallway. "It still works," she said quietly. I nodded. Then she looked at me, eyes raw and clear. "Why are you still here?" It was the only honest question she'd ever asked. I didn't answer right away. I studied her face, this new version of her, stripped of softness. No performance. Just a woman who had lied, broken, erased, and returned. And I said, "Because you're still wearing it." She blinked. And for the first time in months, she didn't look away. I don't know what happened between them that night by the pond. But I know this. The data doesn't lie. The silence afterward wasn't peace. It was a pause. And pauses end. So we live in this house now, surrounded by clean counters and careful language. We cook. We smile. We talk about new routines, new habits, new starts. But every night, I charge the bracelet. Every morning, I check the app. And every week, the pulse logs remind me. She's still here. Still sinking. Still moving. But never too fast. And never too far. Because she knows. If that signal ever disappears again, I won't be the one who waits. Thanks for watching. If this story pulled you in, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next confession. Until next time, take care and watch who you trust.